one of the ways that Portamore was founded, quite frankly, was because we had a lot of homeless people coming in to our facility and saying, hey, when that event is over, do you think I could get a plate? You know, I don't want to interrupt people, but can I get a plate? Or when that event is over, do you think I can mop your floors for a couple of dollars? And my tenants and I just decided, well, I wonder what we could do. So when men and women come by, sometimes families come by, we can hand them something. We can hand them a bag of food, or we can hand them a couple of dollars. And we just started raising funds to do that. Some food here and some clothes here. And then it just became like huge, right? But I never intended for it to become an organization. It was just going to be something that I was doing isolated in my business. I never intended for it to become citywide, but the need was so great. And so once we started going, we couldn't stop. I don't even think we had a name. We were just doing it. We were just doing the work.
I'm Jonathan Coppage Henley. I'm the pastor here at Cokesbury United Methodist Church. We've got a small congregation, but a great congregation that's been here at this location on Idlewild Road ever since 1973 or so. Moving into 2020, we knew that we as a congregation had a pretty big responsibility to the neighbors around us, recognizing that our congregation has changed, our neighborhood has as well. When COVID hit, back in March, or at least when everything shut down back in March, one of the first things that we did was to get in touch with the elementary school. And we've got a good relationship with Idlewild Elementary School. It's a Title I school. One of our greatest concerns was that all the kids in our community would have a meal.
Community service is a key part of Sikhism. It does not matter whether you are rich or poor, you are black or white, your sexual orientation, your caste system, it does not matter, right? Everybody is equal. And so Sikhism started with a very simple message that God is one. And if you look at the Sikh scriptures, the very first word is Ek Onkar, which means Ek means one. Onkar is a representation of the God, which means God is one. It's in you, it's in me, it's in everything we see. So equality is the cornerstone of the religion. There are three fundamental tenets. One, you have to live a life in remembrance of that God. Second is hard work. A lot of importance has been given to living an honest life. And the third key cornerstone is giving 10% of your earning or your time back to the community.
And we are a food bank. We are an emergency assistance fund. We host a monthly community free store, and we also do workshops around financial literacy, financial security, financial empowerment for those who are considered poor and working poor in the greater Charlotte area. I consider myself a progressive Christian. Christian literally means in Greek, little Christ. Those of us who consider ourselves Christians should be like little Christ. We should be living a life of sacrifice and a life of giving and a life of building, community building, as Christ did. You know, Christ was a revolutionary. If he was around today, I don't think he would be spending a lot of time in the four walls of a church. You know, he would be over at the tent city, and he'd be at the host row, and he'd be in the trap where they're selling crack. You know, like he would be in those places, giving light to those places. I model my life after that, and there's no room for us to be trying to only serve the Christian poor or the Black poor, you know, or the straight poor. Like, that's idiotic.
We moved to Charlotte back in 2016. And ever since we've been here, we've been really involved with the youth activities in different kinds of spiritual education, spiritual empowerment programs.
So the Baha'i faith means the oneness of God, the oneness of humans, and the oneness of all religions.
Yeah, and I would say, like, you know, one of our big purposes is not to like convert those who are in our programs to the Baha'i faith, but really to help people live out their own faith more fully. It's actually a law in our faith that we don't pressure or push anyone to become a member of the Baha'i faith, but that we share it generously with folks, and they on their own can decide whether it's something they want to devote themselves to, or if they just want to, you know, become better in their own faith, their own path in life.
Our roots are in progressive Christianity, but we are no longer Christian. We are Unitarian Universalist. We draw from a very broad range of spiritual interests and traditions. We have everything from Christians to atheists as a part of our religious community, people from a Jewish background, people who identify with a Buddhist tradition, people who are humanists. What we cohere around are a set of values that start with an affirmation that everyone has worth and dignity as they are. We understand ourselves to be a part of an interdependent web of all existence. So everything we do pulls on that web in some way. Everything we say, everything we buy, everything we wear, how we vote. So our religion focuses on how do we live out our relationship to other people, honoring their worth and dignity. Also on how do we understand our lives as part of this larger order of things. We have a focus in our congregation on environmental justice, as well as on racial justice, economic justice, and cultural justice.
If you go to a Sikh temple, you'll see a flag outside the temple. It's called Nishan Sahib. It means a place that you can identify, right? It's like a marker. And the reason why 400 years back, that flag that goes really high up was installed outside the Sikh places of worship was for people to identify from a distance where they can go to seek help. And I think generally Sikh community across US has done a lot when it comes to this pandemic, largely shaped by the spiritual aspect of what Sikhs believe in. In New York, they've served over 100,000 people over a period of 6 months. In California, they've run food banks outside the Sikh places of worship. In India alone, they've served over 2 million people, consistently delivering food across India.
Well, my name is Sudama. I go by Aya Sudama. Aya is an old word from the time of the Buddha that nuns often were referred to as. And my title is Bhikkhuni, meaning a fully ordained female monk. I was actually the first Western woman to receive the full female monk ordination in the country of Sri Lanka. Just some years ago, I found myself somewhat homeless, and I ended up founding a center here in my hometown of Charlotte. The community is very hard to describe. I have friends. I have supporters. You know, in traditional cultures, there's a lot of disciples. I'm not sure if I have a lot of disciples. I'm not sure if I even am all that comfortable with disciples. There are certain people from various Buddhist countries in my school of Buddhism, or even some outside of my school of Buddhism, who are very faithful, very much wanting to do their practice of Buddhism by supporting a monastic. And there are a whole lot more people also of those countries, and a lot of Americans who just want to learn some things about Buddhism or about meditation, or just have an opportunity to meditate with other people. The people who actively, directly support me, probably half of them wouldn't call themselves Buddhist. So I don't really have a congregation per se. There are just people who are drawn to what is offered here.
And so we're a young organization. We're only about a year old, but in that time, we've been able to serve close to 10,000 people. We've impacted close to 10,000 people. So, you know, prior to COVID, one could call my number and, you know, I ask a few questions to see if an individual qualifies for our services. And then we set an appointment for them to come inside of our free store and shop. Obviously, particularly during the earlier stages of COVID, when we were just literally shut down, that could not happen. Pornomore is located inside of my business, Noda at 28th Creative Arts Studios, and it's a multi-purpose space. So we do a free store pop-up. So we move all of the things outside of what used to be the free store and is now a storage unit, and put it in a large space where there could be social distancing, and where we can create departments for all of the different goods. So there's a shoe department, there's a clothing department, there's a body care area, there's a department for food, there's a department for furniture, household items, all of that. By design, we've created it to to be a dignifying experience. And so everything that we put out for our guests is either brand new or gently used. And it's a judgment-free zone because, if you look around and the person to your left is poor and the person to your right is poor, there's no room for you to be tripping about their sexual orientation or, their ethnicity. That's just foolish, right? So, people come in with that understanding, and I'm really excited about the way that we've been able to create an affirming space.
Our work, we understand now, is to be invested and involved in systemic change, to go upstream, to use the metaphor, and to ask, why do these needs exist in the first place? And we've been taking groups through very deep historical analysis on racial justice, economic justice, cultural justice, and environmental justice, understanding how the system became this way. So we've continued during this time doing those groups, though we're doing them virtually. What we try to do is find partners in the community who align with our intersectional mindset and with our interest in changing the system. We see ourselves as called to invest deeply with those who are trying to make systemic changes.
Because we also house Urban Promise East over here on our campus, we had a good relationship with them, and we knew that we would have some students that we would be able to feed just because of that relationship. But then what we realized was that the need was pretty extensive, and so beginning in March, the very first week that schools were closed, we started distributing meals for families. As a small congregation that has about 70 in worship, we figure that since this all began back in March, we figure we've given out around 48,000 meals and still counting. The Baha'i Community Center, the youth group, the Spirit River Junior Youth Group has come by and participated with us. Central United Methodist Church has sent a number of volunteers, and we really couldn't have done this without them and without their help in translating. We were able to get connected to Loaves and Fishes, able to get connected to Uptown Farmers Market. So there are people who are wanting to do good, and we realize that trying to continue to meet the needs that are right here that we don't have to drive anywhere to find, we weren't going to be able to do it without other people's help.
The National Medical Association a couple of years ago declared that the assaults and the murders of transgender people, particularly Black transgender women, is at epidemic level. We're doing work to be able to serve that community, specifically Black trans women make up about maybe 10% of our shoppers at Pour No More, because we create an affirming environment for them and LGBTQ people in general, and anybody who is in that group of other, homeless people, people with disabilities. We make sure that those people feel at home and have the support that they need.
COVID-19 certainly early on had some impact because we take a lot of energy from each other.
Right.
Within Sikh religion, there is importance of Saath Sangat, which essentially means company of holy men, like-minded people, and they give energy to each other so you can all collectively do the right thing, good things, make a difference in the society. But after a couple of months, we did get organized virtually. We started doing a virtual congregation. We found that back in last week of February that there were many people becoming homeless. In March, we started several community service projects to help them consistently 2 times a week. Till end of September, Sikh community consistently delivered hot meals and care packets to homeless population near Uptown.
Initially for us, like the first thing we did is with the youth groups that we have, we tried to just educate the youth and their families about the pandemic. A lot of the families we work with are from immigrant backgrounds. English is not their first language, and they may have just come to the country just a few years ago. And with all the misinformation that's been out there and the lack of information, it can be kind of confusing. And so some people didn't even know what was going on, and we were kind of preparing everyone, gradually for when the governor finally kind of, shut everything down and locked us all into our homes and everything.
They have been a lot more active on Buddhist sites online. Sometimes questions have to do with despair, depression, how to cope. And I attend to those very quickly when they come up. And on one of those sites, for example, I was already in bed and for whatever reason gave my phone one last look before pulling the covers up and going to sleep. And someone begged for a monastic, for clergy to talk to them if possible. I couldn't have imagined decades ago that a conversation by chat could feel like a real talk. I do see that as a role that probably all the clergy are playing. You know, the people are hurting.
Yeah, and I think in our case, because so much of our work is in the community itself, like in the neighborhood, that like, having everybody at home meant everyone was available, to talk. And from what we could tell, from what we learned, it seemed like it was pretty safe to, be outside, right? Especially during the summer when it's hot and there's a lot of wind and stuff blowing. And it was great. A lot of people were home and were eager to engage in conversation, eager to build community. And it was something they really longed for and had longed for, but life was so busy, so all, here and there, that folks didn't have as much time for it. And I think it's helping us all to really take a strong look at our family lives.
It's really created momentum in starting these new activities. Some devotionals we've started with different families at the park and invited to our home. We've had Friday night cookouts by our fire, and shared prayers and stories and songs and created a sense of community. And we've been able to meet with the junior youth outside our house on the grass, and they love being outside. We have been able to clean up the creek. That had been a huge part of them connecting at the beginning, at a time when we're supposed to be inside and isolated from one another, has a huge impact on one's soul.
One of the efforts that we started actually during the pandemic is partnering with an organization called the Reentry Housing Alliance. What they're doing is creating a database for people who are coming out of the carceral system, who are saying, my primary need is for housing. And these folks said, can you help us create this database by calling landlords, apartments, rental agencies, and saying, what are your policies relative to people with a criminal record? People come out of that system. So they go to an apartment complex and they say, I want to put in an application. The apartment complex says, all right, that's going to be $50. They look at the application, find out, oh, you got a criminal record. We don't rent to people with criminal record. $50 down the drain. So what we've done is we've made the call, Reentry Housing Alliance. They can say to these folks, here's the list of folks where you have an honest chance of actually being able to get housing.
The material world doesn't belong to us. Never has, never will, but we forget every day. Off and on all day, we have to remind ourselves again and again, where is our heart? Where is our treasure built up? Where is it? We have to discipline ourselves to remember that, but not give up the opportunities to rub the hard edges off of our hearts. One of the highest ideals we have is the ideal of letting go. Letting go of selfishness, pride, all the negative states, letting go again of the idea of self, overcoming our greed, our hate, delusion, ignorance. So in this, again, the letting go isn't that we let go of kindness, consideration, compassion, but let go of wherever we're sticky and holding on. Wherever there's pain, it's in the body, it's a signal to look at this. Wherever there's pain in the heart, it's a signal, look at this. What's happened is that we're attached to something, and the way it's being ripped away is very painful because of how we're attached to it.
This is the kind of stuff that I feel like I was ordained for. This has been transformative for my church. It's been transformative for me. I'd say if you got any question about whether or not you should do something and you think that God's calling you to do something, if Jesus did it, something like feed people, you ought to go do it. Don't ask questions. You can ask your questions later after you did it.
The changes and chances of this world are tests from God, and all tests from God are healing medicine. So this test is a healing medicine that helps us open up to what these racial, cultural, religious prejudices that have already existed It gave us the opportunity to be able to see them. It's really a blessing for us at this moment in humanity's evolution to have this shock in our system to bring about the acceleration of this consciousness.
Sometimes, and I'm probably not alone, I can just really be cynical sometimes about the human condition. But it's something about when we are in a collective crisis, people really do come together. We all got light and we all got dark, and the light is activated when it really needs to be. And that's the only good thing about a collective crisis. The light gets to shine a little brighter.